Welcome to Bluff Creek Radio. I'm Kareem.
And I'm Bella.
And today's special guest is...
Hello, my name's Leanna Patton.
Mind if we ask you some questions?
Sure.
So, are you from Romania?
I am.
What would you say the biggest difference in schools was there?
My biggest memory of growing up in the school there was the fact that we ended so early. It ended about 1 o'clock. So there, because of the limited spaces in the buildings, in the school buildings, they would split the amount of children in half days versus, so there would be morning half up until 1 o'clock, and then from 1:30 on, there would be a second half of children that would come. And that was for every grade, for almost every school around the city we lived in. So we did a lot of only schoolwork while we were in school. We didn't do gym, we didn't have music. All of that stuff happened after school mainly. We would just play outside and that would be our activities.
What technology was your favorite as a kid?
I remember loving the television, and probably because we had a limited time on it. We would only have it on for 2 hours a day, and that's because the type of government we lived in was communism, and they would put a limit on electricity, so we would have only 2 hours of electricity, and then they would just completely shut it off. We wouldn't have electricity the rest of the night. So sometimes I even remember doing homework. If I didn't get it done in time before it got dark, I would do it under candlelight because we wouldn't have electricity in the evenings.
Did you have any favorite foods that you had in Romania?
That were different than here? Well, because, again, going back to the type of government we lived under, they would restrict us to we would have to have such a tight budget because they would restrict that we would have to ration our amount of food they allow. So when we go to the store, they didn't allow a family to have more than a certain amount that was set already. So we lacked a lot of the fruits and vegetables that were very expensive. We didn't always get them unless we had family members that had owned a farm. So chocolates or sweets were very expensive. That was like a luxury to have, and that happened. I remember being so excited when my dad would bring home chocolate bar, and we would all have to share one little piece of chocolate bar that was the size of a Hershey. No. So I remember, just waiting for that next time I will get a chocolate piece of candy.
So how many kids were in your class at school?
There was about 20, because they did split the school in half days. For half the school, they were smaller classes. No, we had to wear a uniform. That was an interesting. Also, we had sashes, and we all had. They had a. They started teaching us how the government worked by giving us similar roles. So every child in the class had a certain role, to mimic the government that we lived under back then. There was a president, there was a vice president, and everything else that was part of the government. So we each had a pin or something to put on our sash over our uniform for that year.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys. This was fun.
No problem. Today's radio podcast was brought to you by Bluff Creek Elementary School and Eastern Carver County Schools.